I pulled into the gravel drive, and for a second thought I had the wrong house. The porch light I grew up under, where Grandpa used to sit with a thermos and listen for owls, was dark. A bright orange tag flapped against the front door like a warning. Estate inventory. Excluded. A. Whitaker. Excluded? I whispered to no one, because Grandpa was gone, and the wind didn't answer. The lock turned, but didn't give. Someone had changed it. The old brass knob that always stuck in summer had been replaced with a keypad and a smug little beep that said, "You don't belong here." I wasn't dressed for a confrontation. Faded work jeans, a hoodie from my IT help desk job, keys jangling like I still had options. I tried to ring Aunt Margaret. No answer. Tyler, my cousin, picked up on the second ring. "Drew," he said, using the nickname he dusts off when he wants to sound kind, "you're not supposed to be there." What does excluded mean? I kept my voice low so it wouldn't crack. From my grandfather's house? A pause. Then his PR tone. Per the revised distribution memo, you relinquished your beneficial interest. Standard stuff. We'll get you access later for keepsakes. Revised distribution memo. Beneficial interest. I closed my eyes and saw Grandpa's gnarled hands showing me how to twist a mason jar lid with a towel so I wouldn't hurt myself. He didn't speak in memos. He spoke in chores and stories, and a whistle that meant lemonade was ready. "I didn't sign anything," I said. Tyler sighed like dealing with me cost him time he billed by the minute. "You did, actually. We'll forward the PDF. Look, we're prepping for the foundation gala. Big night. Can this wait?" The line clicked dead. The wind pushed the tag, and it slapped the door again. Excluded. I stepped back, looking at the window of the den where Grandpa and I used to play cribbage, where he kept his fishing tackle box under the desk. The yard still smelled like hay and diesel and soap. Rosa must have scrubbed the porch clean the way she always does before guests. I took 2 more steps and almost kicked a rusted mail someone left near the lilies. I picked it up, pocketed it without thinking, and that's when I heard Rosa clear her throat. She stood at the corner of the porch in her blue work jacket, hair tucked under a bandana, eyes soft and worried. "Your aunt told us to let the estate team do their job," she said, voice low, "but this is your home." We looked at the orange tag together. "I brought your grandfather clean sheets the night he passed," she added, voice trembling just once. "He asked me to tell you to check the little silver latch. Do you remember? The one in the old desk?" My throat tightened. I remember. Rosa tugged a key from her pocket, the kind you keep when nobody trusts you because you've earned it more than they have. "I didn't see anything," she said, and slipped the key into my palm. Inside, the air held on to dust and lemon oil. The den's window let in a rectangle of late light, painting the desk in gold. I reached under the drawers, fingers finding the tiny silver latch Grandpa carved in when I was 12 so I could hide baseball cards from Tyler. It popped with a stubborn click. The old tackle box wedged behind the false panel scraped my knuckles as I pulled it free. Its clasp had a new piece of tape on it with Grandpa's scrawl. "Character isn't a signature, Drew." My breath stalled. I opened the box. Hooks, line, half a cork, the old license he liked to pretend was still good, and a micro USB drive wrapped in a handkerchief. Rosa watched the doorway, tense. "Quick," she whispered. I slid the drive into my pocket and closed the latch, reseating the empty box like nothing had happened. I could hear tires rolling up, and a state van. Time thinned. "Rosa," I said, heading for the back door, "thank you." She caught my sleeve. "You were here when he needed someone," she said. "They were at dinners. Remember that." Outside, I tucked the drive into my wallet behind the emergency 40 I kept for days just like this, though I never thought excluded from your own family would be the emergency. As I crossed the gravel, my phone buzzed again. A new email from Tyler. "As you requested, attached is your signed relinquishment and limited power of attorney acknowledgement." I opened the PDF. There was my name, Andrew Whitaker, in a clean black scrawl. Except it wasn't mine. It was the exact tilt and pressure from the HR packet I'd signed when the foundation briefly hired me as a part-time IT contractor last year. Same scan artifact in the tail of the K. They'd lifted my signature from a vendor onboarding doc and pasted it onto a relinquishment. And then there was the other document, limited power of attorney, dated during Grandpa's hospice, something he'd granted me strictly for medical decisions so I could approve refills when Aunt Margaret was too busy. They'd twisted it into a general authority. The estate van door slammed. A man in a zip-up vest started up the walk with a clipboard and a neutral smile that said, "Don't make this hard." I didn't. I got in my car and drove away with the drive burning a hole in my pocket. 2 blocks down, at the public library's parking lot, I breathed for the first time since the tag slapped the door. I plugged the micro USB into my old laptop. A single file blinked up. "If you're seeing this, it's you.mp3. Grandpa's voice filled my headphones, rough-edged and warm. "Drew," he rasped, "if the wrong folks got noisy and you got small in your shoulders like you do, remember, character isn't a signature. I left the real proof where no one who doesn't know the smell of hay would ever look. You remember the false panel in the barn? Your hands were smaller then. They're stronger now. Go lift it." The track ended. No legalese, no memo. Just a breadcrumb from the only man who ever made me feel like being poor in a rich family didn't mean being less. I closed my eyes, then opened them to the reflection of myself in the laptop screen. Tired, 34, hoodie zipped to my chin, jaw set. I started the engine and turned toward the barn. "Excluded?" I said aloud, just to hear how the word sounded with my voice wrapped around it. "We'll see." The barn creaked like it had arthritis. Every board whispered with age, but to me it was muscle memory. The summers I baled hay until my arms burned, the winters Grandpa and I fixed fences while our breath froze in the air. The smell was still there, cut grass gone sweet, motor oil, and the faint tang of iron. My headlights lit the wide doors. They groaned when I pulled them apart, revealing a hollow darkness that seemed too quiet for a place that once rang with hammer strikes and radio static. I clicked on my phone flashlight, stepping past the rusted tractor and the wooden stall doors. Grandpa had shown me the false panel when I was 14. "Always keep a space where you can hide what matters," he'd said, "because not everyone who calls you family will act like it." At the far wall, beneath an old ladder and a coil of rope, my fingers found the edge of a plank looser than the rest. I tugged. Dust and cobwebs fell on my hoodie, but the plank gave. Behind it, in a narrow cavity, sat a flat leather ledger, edges worn smooth by decades of hands. The leather cracked when I lifted it. Inside, handwritten entries filled pages in Grandpa's careful block print. Dates, amounts, vendor names, notes. But the last year's pages looked different. Newer ink, sharper strokes, and a handwriting style I knew too well. Aunt Margaret's cursive. I flipped through. She'd continued Grandpa's system, but whole columns were wrong. Donations routed from Whitaker Foundation accounts into shell vendors, sane companies Tyler had bragged about signing at his PR firm. $500,000 here, $250,000 there, all disguised as event expenses. And then one page stabbed through my chest. A note in Grandpa's handwriting, dated 2 months before he passed. "Drew, if you're holding this, it means Margaret and Tyler are already moving money. Don't confront them yet. Collect the truth. Let their greed hang them." The words blurred as my eyes stung. He'd known. He'd seen the storm coming and trusted me to ride it out. I closed the ledger just as tires crunched outside the barn. My flashlight caught dust spinning like gnats. Voices. 2 men. A state crew again? No. I recognized Tyler's lazy laugh. I killed the light and pressed against the stall, breath shallow. Their footsteps echoed inside. "Said he was poking around earlier," Tyler muttered. "Rose is too soft. If Drew finds anything—" Aunt Margaret's sharper tone cut him off. "He won't. Green has it under control. And Drew? He doesn't fight. He folds." They stopped near the ladder, not 10 feet away. I could see Tyler's polished shoes under the crack of the stall door. "You saw the memo," he said. "Legally, he's out." "Legally?" Margaret snapped. "Legality is a costume, Tyler. We gave Green enough fabric. But if he stumbles on?" Her voice dropped. I strained to hear. "Then we make sure donors hear he's unstable. Poor Drew. Desperate Drew. A story they'll believe. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. They left soon after, doors slamming, their SUV headlights slicing through the cracks. When silence finally returned, my heart was still thudding in my ears. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos of every suspicious page, then slipped the ledger back into the cavity, plank and all. Grandpa's words echoed, "Don't confront them yet." As I drove away, my phone buzzed. A new email from the Foundation board listserv. Announcement. Special presentation added to gala. A legacy secured by Margaret Whittaker and Tyler Whittaker. I laughed out loud, bitter. A legacy secured, all right. Secured with forged memos and stolen donations. But now I had proof. And proof changes everything. The next morning, I brought the USB and my photo set to someone who wouldn't betray me, Fiona, the Foundation's quiet bookkeeper. She worked from a cramped home office, papers stacked like fortresses around her. When she saw the files, her face drained of color. "I flagged discrepancies months ago," she whispered. "Miss Green told me not to worry, that the vendors were vetted. But these invoices—" She held them against her records. "They don't match. They're falsified." "Can you back me up?" I asked. Her eyes darted to a framed picture of her kids. "If they find out I helped—" "They already plan to ruin me," I said. "They'll come for anyone who doesn't play along. At least if we stand together, we have a chance." She bit her lip, then nodded slowly. "Give me a day. I'll pull originals." As I left Fiona's house, hope flickered. But that night it collapsed. My phone lit up with notifications, texts from old college friends, coworkers, even my landlord. Links to an online article spreading like wildfire. Whittaker Black Sheep under investigation for misusing Foundation funds. And there was my face, awkward, caught from some LinkedIn photo, under a headline screaming, "Fraud." My stomach dropped. Tyler hadn't wasted time. They'd framed me before I could even move. I scrolled down. Anonymous sources close to the family claimed I skimmed donations while working IT for the Foundation, that I'd been let go quietly to avoid scandal. None of it true. But true doesn't matter once it's viral. My phone buzzed again. A text from Fiona. "Drew, be careful. Green circulated a suspension letter barring you from estate grounds. She says you're unstable." I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the headline glowing on my screen. They'd weaponized every assumption. Poor relative, unstable, desperate. They'd turned my life into a headline before I could even defend myself. But Grandpa's words steadied me. Character isn't a signature. I looked at the tackle box on the table, USB drive beside it. Proof still mattered. The only question was how to use it without them burying me alive first. I barely slept that night. The article had already spread to every corner of my life. Co-workers, old classmates, even neighbors giving me side glances in the grocery store. The kind of whispers you can feel, but not hear. Tyler and Aunt Margaret had spun their stories so fast, it felt like they were everywhere at once, shadows tightening around me. But when dawn broke, I forced myself to remember. Grandpa trusted me with the ledger. He knew this storm would come. He expected me to write it. I called Rosa first. Her voice cracked when she answered. "Andrew, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Margaret and Tyler would drag your name like this." "They've been preparing it for months," I said. "But Rosa, I need to ask you something important. Did Grandpa ever mention his will to you? Not the public copy. They've probably swapped that out. I mean the real one." She hesitated. "Once, a few weeks before he passed, he asked me to witness him signing a set of documents in his study. He looked tired, but his mind was sharp. I remember because he joked about Tyler's cologne choking him during board meetings. The papers, I thought they were his will. Do you know where they went? I watched him lock them in the desk drawer. But after the funeral, Green said the drawer was empty. She claimed he must have moved them." A hollow weight settled in my chest. They hadn't just forged board memos. They'd stolen Grandpa's real will. After hanging up, I called Fiona again. Her voice was shaky but determined. "I went back through everything," she said. Andrew, Green altered internal emails. She forwarded instructions from Margaret and Tyler and edited them to look like they came from you. If the board checks the archives, it'll seem like you ordered those fake vendors yourself. How do we prove they're edited? Metadata. I've got IT friends who can trace the original timestamps. I exhaled slowly. Pieces were forming, a coalition of truth. Rosa with her memory of Grandpa's real will, Fiona with the doctored emails, and me with the ledger. But evidence means nothing if no one sees it. I needed a stage. That afternoon, as if fate wanted to taunt me, my phone buzzed with another board email. Formal will presentation. This Friday at the estate library. Attendance mandatory for family. I gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. They weren't just going to wave their forged version in front of donors. They were going to make a spectacle, a show of unity while burying me once and for all. The night before the presentation, I drove to the estate. My suspension meant I was technically banned, but some lines you don't ask permission to cross. Malik met me by the service gate, keys jangling nervously. "You know this is crazy," he whispered. "If Green catches me letting you in." "I'll take the blame," I said, "but I need to see that study drawer with my own eyes." Inside, the house felt colder than memory. We slipped past portraits of Whitakers long gone, their oil-painted gazes heavy with judgment. The study smelled of leather and dust. I knelt at the desk. The drawer opened too easily, emptied, polished. Nothing but fresh wood grain. But then Malik crouched, tapping the underside. "Hold up, this isn't smooth. Feel that?" I slid my hand underneath and found a thin ridge, a false bottom. With a push, it popped. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed at the edges. My pulse hammered as I pulled it out. The flap was unsealed, almost like someone had rifled through and shoved it back without care. Inside was a sheaf of papers. The will. I scanned the lines, breath catching. Grandpa's unmistakable block print initials on every page. His signature at the end, dated just weeks before he died. And the provisions were nothing like what Margaret and Tyler had announced. The estate was split fairly among family, but the foundation control? It was mine, explicitly named. My chest burned. They hadn't just stolen, they'd erased Grandpa's last wish, replacing it with their counterfeit. Suddenly, Malik's grip tightened on my arm. Lights outside. We froze. Through the study window, headlights cut across the gravel. Doors slammed. Voices. Margaret. Tyler. Green. We scrambled the papers back into the envelope, shoving it inside my jacket. Malik doused the lamp as the front door opened, footsteps echoing down the hall. "Check the study," Green's voice snapped. We darted toward the side hall, hearts in our throats. Shadows stretched across the wall as they entered the study. "If Drew tries anything tomorrow," Margaret was saying, "we'll have the board convinced he's delusional before he opens his mouth." Tyler laughed. "He'll probably cry. Wouldn't that be a headline? Unstable Andrew, bitter because his grandpa chose us?" Their voices blurred as we slipped out the side door, breathless. The cold night air hit like water. Malik leaned against the wall, panting. "You realize what you're holding? This isn't just evidence. It's dynamite." I clutched the envelope tight. Tomorrow, they want to put on a show. Fine, we'll give them one. The next day, the estate library filled with people. Dark wood shelves towered around us, a chandelier throwing pale light over polished tables. Family members in suits and dresses murmured, their voices a hive of tension. At the front, Green set a neat stack of documents on a lectern. Margaret and Tyler stood on either side, poised like royalty. I slipped in at the back, head high despite the whispers. Phones buzzed. No doubt they'd all read the articles painting me as the unstable one. Green cleared her throat. "We are gathered to formally recognize the will of Robert Whitaker, witnessed and notarized. This document entrusts control of the foundation to Margaret and Tyler Whitaker." "Funny," I said, stepping forward, voice louder than I felt, "because the will I found says otherwise." The room rippled. Margaret's smirk froze. Tyler's eyes narrowed. Gasps cut through the library as I pulled the envelope from my jacket, holding it aloft. Grandpa's real will. His signature. his initials on every page, the one you buried under a false drawer in his study. Green's face drained. This is outrageous. But Fiona, who'd slipped in quietly beside me, raised her hand. I've compared Andrew's copy with the notarization logs. The signatures match Robert's known samples. The one Green presented doesn't. The board erupted in murmurs. Margaret stepped forward, eyes flashing. He forged it. He's desperate, can't you see? I met her gaze. You want desperate? Desperate is what you did when you forged Grandpa's name and doctored emails to make me the scapegoat. Then, with a nod to Fiona, I added, check the metadata on those emails. They came from Green's system, not mine. Gasps spread again. Phones came up, recording. The story was flipping in real time. Tyler, red-faced, slammed his hand on the lectern. This is slander. But before Green could rally, one of the older board members, Mr. Joshua, rose slowly. I've known Robert longer than anyone here. That block print initialing, that was his ritual. He never signed a page without it. Margaret, you said he stopped doing that years ago. You lied. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Margaret's lips tightened, fury flickering before her mask returned. This isn't over, she hissed. Maybe not, but the room no longer belonged to her. The silence in the library clung to the air like smoke. Margaret's mask of calm had cracked. Tyler's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful, and Green's fingers twitched near the lectern as if she could still snatch control back. But the board members weren't looking at them anymore. Their eyes were on me, on the envelope in my hands, on the story that was no longer whispers, but evidence. I placed the will gently on the table, sliding it forward. This is the document Grandpa signed. I don't expect you to take my word for it. Verify it. Call handwriting experts. Check the notarization records. But what you won't do is bury his wishes under forged paper. The words hung, daring anyone to challenge them. Mr. Joshua, steady despite his age, was the first to move. He reached for the will with careful hands. If this is real, his voice trembled slightly, but carried authority, then everything presented by Miss Green and her clients must be examined under suspicion. Gasps swelled around the room. Phones tilted, recording every word. Margaret's eyes darted, calculating. Then she straightened, her voice smooth but icy. You all really think Robert Whittaker, a man who spent his last years confused and declining, had the clarity to write a will weeks before his death? That will is nothing but a fantasy Andrew conjured up in his desperation. Her words slithered, rehearsed. But before I could speak, Rosa rose from the crowd. Her voice wavered at first, but steadied. That's not true. I was there. I saw Robert sign those papers. He wasn't confused. He was sharp. He even joked about Tyler's cologne that day. Don't you dare rewrite his memory to serve your greed. Margaret's jaw twitched. Tyler's fists clenched at his side. The board broke into murmurs, some skeptical, some nodding in Rose's favor. Green's voice sliced through the noise. Enough. The Foundation's reputation cannot survive this circus. The official, notarized will has already been filed with the court. Andrew can waive his forged document all he wants, but the law recognizes ours. For a heartbeat, my chest tightened. Was she right? Could all this, Rose's testimony, Fiona's metadata, the block-printed initials, still be swallowed by a court that only sees the filed copy? Then Fiona stepped forward, clutching her laptop. Actually, I requested a certified copy of the will that was filed, and it doesn't match the notarization logs. The stamp on the last page? The notary listed wasn't even practicing in the state at the time, which means your copy, Green, isn't just suspicious, it's illegal. The library erupted again, the sound a tidal wave. Fingers pointed, cameras zoomed. Margaret turned scarlet. You little... She cut herself off, but the venom had already slipped. Tyler tried to salvage control, his voice booming. This is nothing but a smear campaign. Andrew couldn't manage his own life, so he wants to drag the rest of us down with him. Do you really think Grandpa would leave the foundation to someone who barely scraped by, who never fit into this family? Every word was a knife, but I didn't flinch. I let the silence afterward linger, the board waiting for my answer. Then I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. You want to know what Grandpa thought of me? He gave me the ledger, the record he kept in his own hand, because he knew numbers don't lie. In those pages, I found how you, I pointed at Tyler, build the foundation for your personal ventures. And you, I turned to Margaret, rerouted charitable funds into shell companies you controlled. You think he didn't notice? He noticed. That's why he locked this will away, so his last wish couldn't be poisoned by you. The words landed like thunder. The board members shifted, their whispers sharper now. And then, just when I thought the momentum was mine, Margaret pulled her trump card. With a dramatic flourish, she raised her phone. If you want to talk about numbers, Andrew, let's talk about this. She tapped, and a projection screen behind her lit up with an email thread. Dozens of eyes turned upward. The emails looked damning. Me writing to a consultant, arranging fraudulent invoices, even thanking them for helping me cover tracks. My stomach dropped. Fiona gasped. Those are the edits, the ones Green doctored. But Margaret was quick. Convenient excuse. Are we really to believe every shred of evidence against Andrew is fake? That he is the only pure one in this family? She spread her arms, voice dripping with disdain. It's pathetic. The board leaned in, torn between outrage and doubt. Phones buzzed with live commentary. For a flicker of a moment, I felt the ground slipping again. Then Fiona snapped her laptop shut with a sharp crack and stepped forward, fire in her eyes. I can prove it, right here, right now. If the board allows me to access the estate's secure Wi-Fi, I can pull the original email logs from the cloud archive. It'll take minutes, and it will show those emails were never sent by Andrew. All eyes turned to Green. She paled, then quickly masked it with indignation. That's a gross violation. Absolutely not. Mr. Joshua cut her off. You've already dragged this family through scandal. If transparency is the only way to end it, then so be it. Miss Fiona, you have 5 minutes. A stunned hush fell. Fiona hurried to connect, her fingers flying. Margaret and Tyler whispered furiously with Green, panic seeping through their facades. The tension was unbearable. Every tick of the grandfather clock felt like a drumbeat. Then Fiona straightened, turning the laptop toward the board. Here it is. Metadata confirms Andrew never sent those emails. They were composed and edited on Green's system. The timestamps align perfectly with nights Margaret and Tyler were logged into the estate network. This is indisputable. Screenshots flashed on the projector. Gasps, shouts, phones recording. Margaret lunged forward, slamming the laptop shut. This is an ambush. None of this is admissible. But Green's voice broke, trembling. She's right. The room went dead silent. Margaret's head whipped toward her. What did you just say? Green's hands shook as she faced the board. I can't carry this anymore. Yes, I altered the will. I edited the emails. They pressured me, told me the foundation couldn't survive Andrew's leadership. But it was Margaret and Tyler's idea. I only executed it. The words detonated like a bomb. Phones caught every syllable. The board members rose from their seats, voices clashing in outrage. Margaret screamed at Green, Tyler cursed under his breath, and security moved closer to the front. I stood rooted, pulse racing. For the first time in weeks, the tide was turning fully and irreversibly against them. The library was no longer just a room lined with leather-bound volumes. It had become an arena. Green's confession still hung in the air, echoing like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Margaret's voice shattered the silence, raw with fury. "You coward! After everything, you fold like this?" She grabbed Green's arm, nails digging in. Green wrenched free, tears streaking her cheeks. "You don't understand. The pressure, the threats. You and Tyler cornered me. I forged what you wanted because I was terrified of losing my career. But I won't burn for you anymore." The board members erupted into argument. Some shouted for security. Others demanded Margaret's resignation on the spot. Tyler slammed his palm on the table. "This is insane! You're taking the word of a trembling lawyer over the real family? Over blood?" His face was red, eyes wild. "Andrew doesn't deserve a dime. He was never good enough, never one of us." That was when Rosa stepped forward, voice sharp as glass. "Blood isn't measured in greed, Tyler. It's measured in loyalty, in compassion. Andrew showed more family in the way he cared for Robert in those last months than you ever did. He's the one who was there when it mattered." Her words cut deep, and I saw Tyler flinch. For a second, guilt flashed across his features before the rage returned. The board chair, Mr. Joshua, raised his hand, commanding silence. His voice carried over the noise. "Enough. We've heard confessions, seen evidence, and watched this family tear itself apart in front of us. But one thing is clear. Robert Whittaker's true will must be honored, and those who sought to undermine it will face consequences." A roar of approval filled the room from those gathered. Margaret laughed suddenly, sharp and bitter. "Consequences? Do you think stripping me of titles will erase what I've built? Do you think Andrew can walk in, wave a dusty envelope, and erase decades of my stewardship? The donors will never follow him. The foundation will collapse." I stepped forward, my voice steady but firm. "No, Margaret, it will heal. It will heal because transparency is stronger than manipulation, because honesty lasts longer than greed, and because people can tell when someone is fighting for legacy, not for ego." The crowd murmured, phones kept recording, but Margaret wasn't finished. Her eyes darted, desperate. Then, in one last gambit, she lunged toward the fireplace mantel where the foundation's ceremonial seal rested, a brass stamp used for authenticating documents. Before anyone could stop her, she seized it, raising it like a weapon. "If I can't control this legacy, no one will." Gasps filled the room. Tyler shouted, "Mom, no!" and tried to restrain her, but she shoved him away. Security moved, but Rosa was faster. She stepped between Margaret and the table where the will lay. Her voice, calm but unyielding, sliced through the chaos. "You'll have to go through me." For a breathless second, time froze. Margaret's arm shook. The fury in her eyes gave way to something else, fear. Perhaps it was the weight of dozens of cameras, perhaps the realization that she had no allies left. Slowly, her grip loosened. The seal clattered to the floor, ringing louder than any gavel. Security rushed in, gently but firmly escorting her out, Tyler trailing after in stunned silence. Green remained behind, collapsed in a chair, sobbing. The chaos ebbed, replaced by a hush as the board refocused. Mr. Joshua cleared his throat. "Andrew, it seems Robert entrusted you not only with his estate, but with the values he wished to see preserved. The board recognizes you as the rightful heir and beneficiary of his will." Applause broke, not thunderous, but steady, heartfelt. I exhaled, the weight lifting from my chest. For the first time in months, I felt air fill my lungs without resistance. But the climax wasn't in the applause. It came in what followed. Karen, my cousin, who had stayed silent until now, stepped forward. She looked torn, eyes glossy with tears. "Andrew, I wanted to believe Mom. She said you were after money, that you'd twist things. But standing here, watching this, I realized she was twisting me. I don't know if I can undo the damage I caused by doubting you, but," her voice cracked, "I want to try." The room blurred for a moment as I swallowed back emotion. I didn't move, didn't speak. Finally, I just opened my arms. Karen stepped into them, clutching me tightly. Rosa smiled softly from the side. Fiona wiped her eyes, though she pretended it was dust. The battle was over. Not in a courtroom, not in front of a judge, but here in the library, in front of the people who mattered, and the thousands who would watch the videos flooding online within hours. Margaret's empire had fallen, and Grandpa's true wishes had been restored. The library emptied slowly after Margaret was taken away. The board members whispered among themselves, security ushered Tyler out like a dazed shadow, and Green sat slumped in her chair, head in her hands. For a long moment I stood there, staring at the table where the forged documents had been laid against the real will. 2 lives had collided there, the one Margaret tried to script with greed and lies, and the one Grandpa had written with quiet trust. When I finally turned, Rosa was the first to come to me. She put her hand on my shoulder. "You did it. Robert would be proud." I wanted to believe that, but in truth, I felt hollow. Winning hadn't erased the months of betrayal, the sleepless nights, the constant doubt gnawing at me. Karen's voice pulled me back. "Andrew?" She was standing near the window, hands twisted together. Her eyes were red, but there was a softness there I hadn't seen in years. I walked over, unsure what to expect. She glanced at me, then at Rosa, then finally met my gaze. I can't stop hearing Mom's voice. Every lie she told, every warning to stay away from you. I believed her, and I helped her hurt you. How do I come back from that? I studied her face, so much like Grandpa's when he was young. The same sharp cheekbones, the same stubborn tilt of the chin. "You come back," I said slowly, "by choosing differently from here on, by remembering whose legacy we're really carrying, and by walking with me, not against me." Her lips trembled, not with rage, but with relief. She stepped forward and hugged me again, tighter this time. For the first time since all this began, I felt like I had a sister back, not an enemy. The days that followed moved fast. News outlets swarmed the estate, running headlines about the Whittaker scandal and heir restores late Robert Whittaker's legacy. Social media clipped every moment. The confession, the confrontation, the seal clattering to the floor. But beyond the noise, the real work began. Fiona worked with the board to untangle the foundation's finances, exposing every backdoor deal Margaret and Tyler had orchestrated. Green resigned from her position but cooperated fully with investigators, her testimony sealing Margaret and Tyler's fate in civil court. Tyler disappeared from public view. Last I heard, he'd moved out of the city entirely. Margaret faced charges for fraud and coercion. But even if she hadn't, her influence was gone. The donors who once flocked to her now distanced themselves in disgust. The foundation itself teetered at first. Donors pulled back, wary of scandal. Staff whispered about collapse. But Rosa insisted we hold a town hall. Open doors, open books, no more secrets. Hundreds came. I stood at the podium, my hands shaking, but my voice steady. "I know trust has been broken," I told them, "not just in this family, but in the foundation itself. But we can rebuild, not by clinging to power, but by serving the causes Robert cared about. We'll publish every budget, every dollar spent. No hidden hands, no manipulation. Just the truth." The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was real, and it was enough. Over time, the foundation's work began to shine again. Schools received funding. Hospitals expanded. A scholarship program was launched in Susan's memory. Karen's idea, one she poured herself into with determination I hadn't seen in her before. That scholarship became the bridge between us. We worked side by side, choosing students whose stories reminded us of Grandpa's values, resilience, integrity, kindness. Each time we handed out an award, I felt something inside me healing. One evening, months later, Karen and I stood at the edge of the estate's garden, looking out at the sunset. The air smelled of lilacs, just like it did when Susan used to host summer gatherings. Karen broke the silence. "I used to think Mom's way was strength," she admitted. "Control, fear, manipulation. But watching it all crumble, I realize it wasn't strength at all. It was weakness, wrapped in noise. You showed me the difference. I swallowed, emotions tightening my throat. I didn't show you. Grandpa did. I just followed his lead. She nodded, tears glinting in the fading light. For once, they weren't tears of regret, but of hope. That night, as I walked through the halls, I paused at Grandpa's portrait. His eyes seemed to follow me, steady, knowing. We did it, I whispered. Not just for me, but for her, for all of us. And in that moment, the weight finally lifted. I want to pause here and speak to you, the one listening to my story. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, you know the sting I'm describing. If you've ever had to fight for what was right, even when the odds felt impossible, you know the exhaustion. But you also know the power of standing firm, of refusing to bend to fear. So, if this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own battles, or gave you hope for healing, I ask you to support this channel. Like this video, share it with someone who might need the reminder, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because these stories aren't just about betrayal, they're about truth, about justice, and about the strength we all carry when we refuse to give up. This story may be over, but the betrayals never stop. Like this video, share it with your circle, and subscribe to Chronicles of Family Betrayal so you don't miss what's coming next. Another shocking story is just one click away below.